Germany is expected to spend about 72 billion euros in defense this year alone, and that is really a record for this country, which is a country, let's not forget, that for many years they struggled with the idea of investing more on defense. But that's changed, and when I spoke to the Minister of Defense from Germany, Mr. Pistorius, he did say that 2% might not be enough given all the security threats that they are facing, and that in the medium to long term they may have to spend even more when it comes to defense. The key question here, though, and given that we are financial news journalists, is where is the money going to come from? And when I posed that question to Minister Pistorius, he told me that he doesn't know yet.
We have to discuss it in the months to come now for the budget in 25, but particularly for the budgets from 28 on, because then the special fund will be spent entirely, and then until then we have to find a solution. I don't know yet where we find the money, but we need it. And what the Chancellor said this morning is absolutely right. We can discuss about spending for social issues, for education, for digitalization, for infrastructure and whatever else, but without security, without freedom, insecurity, without secure freedom, everything else is nothing.
So when it comes to Germany spending more on defense, when or how they will get the money? Will they change the famous debt brake rule? Will they have to cut welfare spending? Or will they be raising taxes? Let's see what sort of path Germany will choose to go. But for the time being, there is a realization that they have to figure this out. They have to spend more on defense. And this is a realization that is not just for Germany. We're seeing that emerging across NATO capitals in Europe. When you look at the EU's plans, they also want the broader continent to spend more on defense. But the key question there also is, once again, how are they going to fund that? And there we are seeing that traditional divide among European nations about raising new debt to fund the defense policy. Now, on the one hand, some countries are in favor of that. On the other, others are very critical of going down that route. Now, when I spoke to the Prime Minister of Belgium, Alexander De Croo, he sounded quite supportive of this idea of coming together to raise new debt just for defense plans. Let's take a look.
Now we need to make sure that we have a wartime economy that can produce at the same pace. Industrial policy and defense is more interlinked than ever, and we as Europeans will do our part in that. I'm also happy that Ursula von der Leyen is in favor of using the capital markets to speed up military spending. I'm in favor of that as well. This is not the magic solution, but it could help actually to speed up and to expand our industrial capacity, and that is really what's at stake today.
So you heard there from the Prime Minister of Belgium saying that raising new debt could be a solution to fund defense targets. Estonian Prime Minister also had similar comments here in Munich. But then when you pay attention to what the Finance Minister of Germany said on stage, Christian Lindner said that Brussels seems to have the same solution to every single problem. He is against the idea of going down that route. The Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, also made similar comments on stage, saying that he does not support the idea of jointly tapping the markets to fund their defense policy. Let's see what will happen when it comes to that. But at this stage, Carolyn, it does seem that the most likely outcome is that we're going to see this happening at the national level. They will have to come from national budgets if indeed they want to increase their defense spending.
And of course, you would be expecting those hawkish comments coming from the Germans and the Dutch. You know, same as always. But the bigger question is, and I loved Mr. Rutte's comments here, he said we should stop nagging and whining about Trump. We should focus on what we in Europe can do for Ukraine. The big question, the crux of the matter is, what if financing and support from the U.S. falls away? Can Europe really fill the gap?
So there is a common knowledge for the time being that the EU or European NATO countries do not have that power, that they cannot come and essentially fund that gap if the United States were to pull out of the defense alliance. For the longest time, we have heard European officials saying this in the context of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that if the United States were to stop supporting Ukraine, that the EU or European NATO countries do not have the power to essentially fill that gap. It's a huge gap to fill. However, though, there is a realization that they need to do more, that they need to step up. And that's not just in the context of the United States and the fact that the lawmakers there have not yet approved financial support for Ukraine. It's also because there are growing comments from European countries that Russia could attack a NATO country in 3 to 5 years. We heard that from the Danes. We heard that from the Germans as well. So in the end, they need to come together. They need to do more on defense policy because they want to be prepared for that eventuality in case Russia decides to attack a NATO country. Now, I just want to leave you with this comment because I thought it was also quite interesting in the context of the conversations that happened here in Munich. When the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, took to the stage, he said that he does not think European countries were ready or are ready to answer an attack from Russia, simply because for the longest time the populations in Europe have not been told about this. They are not aware of this threat, and that is a difference between European countries and Ukraine. The Ukrainians were for the longest time getting ready for this invasion, and so it's important to bear that in mind as we hear these growing comments from several European nations that attack from Russia is feasible within 3 to 5 years.